Hey guys, it's Miss Limer again, here to talk about equivalent fractions. Now, when we are talking about fractions, there are so many different things that we can do. We can do equivalent fractions, comparing fractions, fraction representations, unit fractions. So you're going to see videos on all of that. But today in this video, we're talking about equivalent fractions. Now there's two main vocabulary words that you have to know. You have to know equivalent and congruent. Equivalent means equal. Equivalent, equal. They both have that k in there, right? Equivalent means equal. And then congruent, we like to sing a little song in the class, which is congruent, same size, same shape, congruent. And ever since we started singing that song, it's stuck. So you remember, we have equivalent, which means equal, and congruent, which means same size, same shape. All right, here's our poster for this lesson. We have equivalent fractions, and equivalent means equal. And then our little equal sign guy is saying two fractions are equivalent if they are the same size or the same point on a number line. Okay, so I have some good examples of equivalent fractions and some non-examples of equivalent fractions. So we're going to look at the good examples of equivalent fractions first. If you notice, these two circles are the same size, same shape. They are congruent. In order for you to compare fractions, which I know this is an equivalent fractions lesson, but you have to compare fractions to see if they're equivalent. So in order for you to compare fractions, the shapes have to be the same size and the same shape. Okay, so these are both circles and they're both about the same size. Okay, this one has 2/4 colored in, but if you look at that, that looks like half of the circle's colored in. This one has 1/2. Even though they're turned different ways, they are equivalent. So if you notice, if I take this circle and I turn it, now that half is on top, just like it was on this one. Here we have two rectangles. Even though they're cut differently, they both have half colored in, right? They're the same size and same shape. We both have half colored in. Here is the same point on these number lines. So here we have the point of 1/2, which is exactly halfway between 0 and 1. And we have the point of 2/4, which is exactly halfway between 0 and 1 or 4/4. Same point on the number line. Here we have the same amount of fraction bars filled. So these are holes. We have our 2/2 to make a hole and 6/6 to make a hole. But here, 1/2 is shaded and 3/6 is shaded. And because they take up the same amount of space, they are equivalent. Now here's some non-examples. Even though these both show 1/4, they are not the same shape. And remember, in order for those fractions to be congruent, they have to be the same size and the same shape. Even though these are about the same size, they're not the same shape. These two, they look the same except for one's big and one's little, right? They're the same shape, but they're not the same size. So even though this is 1/2 and this is 1/2, they're not equivalent. So when we talk about equivalent, we talk about equal and fair, right? So imagine that I got this piece of cake and you got that piece of cake. Would you be happy with me? No, right? Because I got more. So that's another part of equivalent. Same size, same shape. Here are some number lines. If you see here, 1/3 is dotted, and here 2/4 is dotted. So if you look at those, they are not the same point on the number line, so they're not equivalent. All right, here's another biggie, because this confuses third graders. These are the same size and the same shape, but do they have the same amount filled in? No, they don't. So not only do they have to be same size, same shape, but they also have to have the same exact amount filled in. So when you're thinking about equivalent fractions, there's two things you need to remember. Equivalent means equal, and that the shapes have to be the same size, same shape. They have to be congruent.